Welcome to AUDL Weekly. We are back with a show all about ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more. I'm Evan Lepler, and it's officially playoff time in the AUDL. 2022 regular season concluded this past weekend, and after starting with 25 franchises competing for a title, we're down to the top 11 teams. 10 games scheduled over the next month will determine our next AUDL champion. Month ahead should be very, very entertaining, as should the show here tonight. Slightly shorter show than usual. We're giving Matt Smith the week off, but we've still got Adam and Daniel sharing their latest thoughts in another spirited disc debate. And coming up next, the fastest 3 minutes in Frisbee to recap the final regular season weekend of the 2022 season. You're watching AUDL Weekly on AUDL.tv, so stick around. All right, welcome back. We got to start today's toss with the craziest play of the week. Maybe the craziest play of the year or the decade, depending on how much you want to argue. I mean, Minnesota's buzzer beater in the closing seconds of the first quarter on Sunday against Detroit was that ridiculous, mesmerizing, and amazing. Brian Vanoka barely gets the desperation throw off through the double team, and it's smacked down by a Detroit defender shy of the goal line. Should be done right there, but no. Brett Bergmeyer with a crazy athletic reaction to keep the disc in the air, and then the infield greatest toward the end zone, where Marty Adams deflects it toward a diving Dylan DeClercq. Utter insanity and just so much fun. Unbelievable stuff. You better believe we'll be talking more about this play with Adam and Daniel in a little bit. But to get to the outcome of the game, Minnesota over Detroit 28-9. Mechanix have now lost 62 straight games. Only meaningful results from a who's in the playoffs perspective this past weekend were in Madison, where the Radicals lost to the Union 21-15. That officially secured Indy's spot in the postseason. And down in Austin, where the Soul crushed the Cannons 30-10. Austin traveling to Carolina for the South Division final on August 20th. Obviously, these results left the Hustle and the AlleyCats to play a game that no longer had playoff consequence. Hustle still win, though, 23-21. Atlanta finishes 8-4, but third place in a division with only 2 playoff spots. Indy, on the other hand, 6-6, but third place in the Central Division playoffs, where 3 teams make it. Indy traveling to Minnesota on Saturday, August 13th. Not a good week for teams that had 2 games on the road. Not at all. Ottawa, Tampa, Oakland, Portland, and Detroit combined to go 0-10 on their doubleheader road trips this past weekend. Very few of these games were close. The lone exception was the real nail-biter between Los Angeles and Oakland. Spiders pushed the Aviators into overtime, but LA captain Aaron Weaver caught the game winner as time expired in the extra period. Aviators closed the season with a walk-off 25-24 victory over the Spiders. If you can't make the playoffs, winning your last game in walk-off fashion, that's still got to be a nice way to end the season. Leaves a pretty good taste in your mouth. Perhaps the only other meaningful result from these road doubleheaders was Dallas, finishing their season with a win. They beat Tampa 24-16. Legion get their first and only win of the year. They avoid an 0-12 season. Legion and Cannons, in fact, both finished 1-11 at the bottom of the South. And as I wrote about in the Tuesday toss last week, the point differential race amongst the division winners was the other interesting Week 14 subplot. In the end, both Colorado and Chicago did pass Carolina as 11-1 teams from a point differential standpoint. That means if the 4 division winners make it to Madison for championship weekend, the semifinal round would deliver the rematch of last year's title game between New York, who'd be the number 1 seed, and Carolina, who'd be the number 4 seed. And with that, the Summit and Union would play in the other semifinal. But if any of those teams lose before championship weekend, then the whole thing gets completely reshuffled. Only way we get Empire Flyers in the semis is if all 4 division champs win their home playoff games on August 20th and 21st, excuse me. It's going to be a really interesting next few weeks, no matter what happens. All right, coming up next, Adam and Daniel join me for Toss Up as we continue on AUDL Weekly. here on AUDL Weekly. Great to be joined by Adam Ruffner and Daniel Cohen for another edition of Toss Up. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Good to see you both. You can catch Adam and Daniel on the Swing Pass podcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let's dive right in. Topic number one. Adam, you get us started. Which rookie receiver has had a stronger individual season? Colorado's Quinn Finer or Portland's Leandro Marks?
I don't want to take anything away from the season that Leandro Marks just came in and had in his first professional year in the AUDL. I mean, he had, 1,300 more receiving yards than I think like the next highest person or something. He closed out the year averaging over 470 receiving yards per game in his last 4 appearances. He was a dynamo with or without the disc for the Nitro, but he was accounting for 75% of scores that were totaling up to 18 a game for Portland in their final 6-7 appearances this season. For all the impressiveness of Marks' stats, I think that the team's lack of successes really kind of hollows them out. Whereas Quinn Finer, I mean, what a season he has had. He completed 97% of his throws while totaling almost 5,000 yards of total offense. He had 3 or more scores in every single one of his 12 appearances. He started every single game. He had 6 games without a turnover as a rookie. And I think what was most impressive has been the last month. Colorado has not so quietly been struggling with some pretty significant injuries and absences to the top end of their offensive rotation, starting with Jay Fruit and Alex Atkins, and then Jonathan Nethercutt wasn't available this past weekend either. Finer didn't slow down a bit. He's just been Mr. Productivity for the Summit all season, and as there's sort of been more and more lineup juggling, he's remained consistent in his productivity levels, if not elevated across the board. And I just think his consistency and his efficiency are second to none right now as a rookie.
Daniel, pretty compelling case Adam makes. Do you care to disagree?
I do care to disagree. I'm a stats guy. I mean, I think Leandro Marks is doing something. He had a level of production that we haven't really seen. I mean, we've seen a few 50-50 seasons in AUDL history, but only 3. This is only the 3rd now since 2019, which is kind of the newer era of clock rules and this 12-game slate. It's extremely difficult to maintain the scoring rate that he did, but the difference between him and the other 2 guys that hit 50-50, Max Shepard and Ben Yot, in 2019, they had other pieces around them. Like Shepard had Thomas Edmonds, Ben Yot was on New York. This was just the Leandro Marks show, literally the entire season. So as far as a stronger or more impressive individual season, I think the fact that he had more total yards than anyone had last year, anyone had this year, basically the same amount of receiving yards as Ben Yot got last year in 3 fewer games. This was just a dominant season for Marks, and it's nothing against Quinn Finer, but I gotta give Marks the edge here.
Interesting. I did think by putting the word individual in the question, it created a little wiggle room there because, obviously Colorado's had the team success, but Leandro Marks' numbers are silly. All right, moving on. Topic number 2. Daniel, who should be more disappointed by their 2022 season? The Atlanta Hustle or the Madison Radicals?
It's got to be Atlanta. I mean, this team had legit championship aspirations this year. Not to say Madison didn't, but with how close Atlanta came last year, just barely losing to New York in the game to go to championship weekend. And then they add all these new pieces this year, even with the Antoine Davis loss, bringing in Bobby Lay, Brad Sinjins, Khalif El-Salam, bringing back John Stubbs, adding Max Thorne. They've been building and building for the past few years. And they're a well-coached team. They just couldn't put it all together. For them to miss the playoffs outright, I think is extremely disappointing. While Madison, of course, is hosting championship weekend and would have loved to be there, I think their expectations were not nearly as high as what Atlanta had for themselves and what the overall AUDL community had for them as well.
Adam, you live in the capital city of Ultimate. Who's been more disappointing, the Hustle or the Radicals?
Well, look, if we're going to be sticklers about wording, I think if you would have said over the past few seasons which team missing out on the playoffs would have been more disappointing. And I think the Radicals missing 3 straight gets within an equilibrium of Atlanta missing this season. But I've got to agree with Daniel on this. I mean, not only did Hustle come into the season as a potential championship team, I mean, we talked about them being on an eye-to-eye level talent-wise with the Carolina Flyers, who are defending their crown. And I think you saw that at various points throughout the season for the Hustle, but they could never really put it together for 4 quarters in any kind of, quote-unquote playoff-level game, except for their Week 4 win against Austin, who is playing on the second night of a back-to-back. Anyways, what I'm really getting at is the way in which the Hustle lost. I think we kind of undersold how catastrophic that fourth quarter collapse was a few weeks ago in Austin. I mean, Atlanta basically had a playoff seed in hand, had a 4-goal lead, 5-goal lead going into the fourth, and just could not stem the tide of the Austin comeback. And that's just uncharacteristic, I think, for Atlanta generally. But now, in 2 straight years, they've essentially fumbled away their seasons while holding a pretty significant lead, at least through halftime, if not into the second half, as they did last year against New York, and now this year against the Soul. So I just start to wonder, what is the Hustle's identity now in big games? They are clearly talented. You look at some of their team metrics this year, and they look like a top 6 team in this league. But they aren't faring well in these big games against edgier opponents, championship level opponents. And so I just start to wonder, when is the tire going to kind of meet the road for this Hustle squad? I think they have all the talent in the world, and I think that they have championship ambitions, but it's not coalescing right now for one reason or another.
Yeah, the format certainly didn't help them either. If there were 3 playoff bids in the South, like every other division, they'd be right in the mix, and we'd be talking about, can they pull off the upset over the Flyers? But instead, we're putting them in the group with teams that didn't make the playoffs, that had high hopes, like Madison. All right, topic number 3. Let's look ahead to the playoffs, Adam. Their teams play a week from Saturday in Salt Lake. Which cutter would you rather have on your team? San Diego's Sean McDougal or Salt Lake's Joe Merrill?
First off, I want to say I'm super excited for this round 3 matchup between Salt Lake and San Diego. I think with both teams kind of showing what they were capable of in the first 2 matchups, Shred obviously coming away with W's in both of those games. This is just setting up for a terrific rubber match between the 2-time defending West Division champions and the upstart Shred. But I think I'm going to be taking Sean McDougal. And no disrespect to Joe Merrill here. He has been fantastic in his first 2 professional seasons, 2021 and 2022. I just think that McDougal adds a bit more variety and a bit more balance as an overall player on any lineup that he's in. And I think that you've seen that over the past few games with the Growlers. It's really started to become the Travis Dunn and Sean McDougal show, and the Growlers are starting to click right at the right time. Paul Lally is having an incredible season for the Growlers, but McDougal and his ability to be that aggressive attacker upfield alongside Dunn really, I think, unlocks San Diego's potential as a championship level team. And he's just shown again and again and again an ability to play well and play well in important games. And to take nothing away again from Joe Merrill, who came back from injury in his last start, made a momentous block that changed the game for Salt Lake. He's been terrific for the Shred, but I'm gonna take the veteran McDougal right now. He's locked in. He's locked in.
I love the no disrespect, but it's like that, the quasi hedge, not the full hedge, but the half hedge. Mr. Captain Hedge, Daniel, what do you think, McDougal or Merrill?
I'm going to agree with Adam. I'm going to take Sean McDougal, and it really is just about that throwing versatility that he brings to any lineup. And like Adam was saying, the Growlers offense, we've seen what it can look like with McDougal, Dunn, Goose, all capable of like those big continuation throws. And obviously McDougal is like a deep burner as a receiver too, but what he brings in that underneath space and the ability to like maintain the flow of the offense and take those shots. We just haven't seen that development from Joe Merrill yet. And again, it's nothing against him. It's just more, McDougal has had time to round into this aggressive thrower downfield. And I think it just gives the offense that many more options. Whereas with Salt Lake, I think it often becomes the Jordan Kerr show just because he is that kind of lone cutter in the downfield space that can take those shots. So I like on my team, I want to have a good cast of those guys. So I would take a guy like McDougal over Merrill.
I mean, they're two guys that both kind of exude positive energy and can put a team on their back. And I mean, I might have leaned toward Merrill just because of what he did after he got injured and kind of the reaction of his teammates when he did come back in against LA a couple weeks ago. Like that said something about his place of value and leadership on the team. But no, two great options. It'd be fun to see them go head to head in the playoffs a week from Saturday. Let's move on to topic number 4. And we got to talk about Minnesota's miraculous buzzer beater against Detroit this past Saturday. Daniel, you get the first crack at it. So it's a 4-way toss-up. Which member of the wind chill deserves the most credit for the insane sequence? Bevon, Brett Bergmeyer, Marty Adams, or the guy who caught it, ultimately, Dylan DeClercq?
I've given this a good amount of thought. I think as far as degree of difficulty goes for whatever those 4 guys were able to do, I still need to rewatch like several times over to really understand what happened. But I'm gonna give Marty Adams the edge here. I think the fact that the disc was coming at him at an angle, hitting the disc like with the momentum coming against you, not even popping it up, but just like redirecting it straight in front of you to a point where it's still catchable, that's just so difficult to do. I myself have tried it many times and failed many times. So a lot of respect to Marty Adams in his ability to keep that disc alive. But obviously there's really no wrong answer here. I'm curious to hear what Adam says.
Adam?
Oh, we're going straight upstairs to the big guy on this one. I mean, that's who's really responsible for this, because that was an act of God. I've never seen a play like that before. I mean, what? It deflected off of 4 players in the air. Bergmeyer had to catch it in the air, but it had to be before time stopped, because if you stop rotation on the disc, that's a possession, and after the clock expires, that would count as a dead disc. So he had to keep it in the air. Adams had to, like you say, mack it into the end zone. But I think actually I might have to go with Bevon, because I think without the RPMs you get on those Bevon flicks, and if you watch the end zone angle of that play, he squeaks that disc through about a postage box size hole between multiple Detroit defenders, gets so much torque on the disc that it hits off of one player, deflects off of another, and goes off of a third into the end zone. You know, I just think that sometimes on these end of quarter situations, we kind of get distracted a little bit by the prestige, by the end move. But man, that throw to set everything up and to just even put it kind of in the right vicinity for it to be a pack play that might come out in the wind chill's favor, I'm going to have to go with Bevon, but there's not an incorrect answer. Bergmeyer saving the deflection in the air off of a block. The awareness on that, I mean, I think most players just let that hit and fall to the ground. So I don't know. That was goofy. That was
Evan,
wild.
what would you say?
Yeah, what would you say?
Well, I appreciate you asking, because I have some strong opinions on this. And usually when I express strong opinions and you haven't asked, I get shut down. There is absolutely a right answer, and both of you got it wrong. The answer is Brett Bergmeyer. For him to leap in midair, have the reaction time to catch the deflected disc, recognize where he is on the field, where his teammates are on the field, get it to a place where Adams could have potentially caught it leaping into the end zone, but made it more difficult for himself and tipped it in because DeClercq told him to tip it. I mean, the answer is either Bergmeyer or DeClercq. DeClercq actually caught the goal. If he had fumbled it away, we wouldn't be talking about any of this. But the answer is truly Brett Bergmeyer.
This is why we don't let you answer. You threw in DeClercq there. Like, we love Dylan, but
the DeClercq catching the goal, like the Bevon argument, he threw the disc, okay? It's the same, take either bookend.
Yeah, Bevon threw it and the disc got blocked. Bergmeyer was the hero on this play. It was by far the highest degree of difficulty what he did.
Team play. It's team play.
No, I still like Marty Adams on this. That's such a difficult Mac.
If the three of us tried to replicate it, if the three of us tried to replicate it and we had like 100 tries, do you think we could do what they did?
I think we all get hand blocked 99 times out of 100 at the point of attack. So that's why I'm choosing Bevon.
The double team would be the trickiest part.
Would just
but I think 100 tries, I think we could do it.
Yeah, I could for sure throw the disc and get it blocked. I've done that plenty of times in my life. All right. Adam and Daniel, thank you very much for joining me this week on Toss Up. Next week, we'll be in full playoff preview mode. Cohen's Cut coming up next, and then I'm back to wrap up the show after this.
What's up, AUDL fans? Daniel Cohen here with this week's Cohen's Cut. Today we're going to be looking at the San Diego Growlers red zone set and how they implement a vertical stack offense to attack the break side. The Growlers rely on this vertical stack because of the way it creates space, particularly break side space. And since they've got a bunch of throwers that can consistently break their marks, this gives them an edge over most defenses. So we see the sequence begin with Hunter Corbett and Tim Okita in the backfield. Now in the red zone, San Diego loves to initiate their vertical stacks from the front because this cutter has the most options of space to attack compared to the other positions in the stack. They can cut in, or deep, or even straight horizontally, either to the force side or break side. So from the front of the stack, Paul Lally begins by cutting in towards the force side to center the disc. Now Corbett and Okita both clear out of the backfield after this initial throw, which is super key because it takes their defenders out of the play and clears space for the next cut to come from the front. Now it's Goose Helton's turn as the active cutter next. And remember, the Growlers are always trying to take advantage of open break side space. So Goose times his cut really well here. Right after Corbett and his defender run by on the force side, Goose fakes a cut to that vacated space, then right as Okita is bringing his defender out of the break side space, Goose cuts back hard to get that inside break from Lally. By attacking the break side, it puts the defenders on the wrong side of the downfield cutters, which gives the offense openings for continuation cuts. Here, the back of the stack defender actually commits hard to stopping the break side continuation, so it forces the cutter in the back of the stack to move towards the crossfield space. Now running away from the defender, plus a hard fake from Goose, pulls that defender out of the space that the Growlers want to attack. Now watch Jesse Cohen, whose defender had been trailing him since the throw to Helton. He times a perfect follow-up cut to the break side once that defender is cleared out of the space. Goose hits him with a backhand break, and the Growlers convert for the game-winning goal over Dallas. Thanks for watching, and be sure to join me next time for another Cohen's Cut.
And that'll do it for our show tonight. Matt Smith's Upline Out of Bounds will return next week when we'll be back to preview the opening round of the AUDL playoffs. It's been a whirlwind few weeks around the Ultimate World from a World Championship perspective, but the AUDL action only intensifies with the playoff schedule that is ahead. For now, though, my thanks go out to Adam Ruffner, Daniel Cohen, and our editor extraordinaire, Luke Johnson, for helping to put together the show tonight. I'm Evan Lepler, and I thank you for checking out AUDL Weekly. Hope you enjoy this rare weekend off from AUDL action, and I'll talk to you again right here next Wednesday.